All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to Palmdale Water District's Let's Talk H2O with PWD. As some of you might know, we've been holding these events for our community to keep them informed of different things that are happening in our district. And the topics have ranged from emergency preparedness to the effects of the Bobcat fire. And today our focus is the Hazard Mitigation Plan and the community survey that goes along with that. And joining me in today's presentation are PWD Assistant General Manager Adam Lee and Dean Gibson with HDR Engineering. But before I hand it over to Adam and allow him some time to talk about the hazard mitigation plan, I know you're all excited that we're having a raffle today. So if you can see behind me, I have the kit behind me, and it's an emergency kit that's worth valued at $250. So the deal is you have to stay throughout this entire presentation to be eligible for that raffle. So anyway, Adam, do you want to take over?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So welcome to our Let's Talk on Hazards Mitigation. And so today we are talking about hazards mitigation. The district actually was very fortunate to get a grant from FEMA that allow us to actually evaluate the various hazards that we have and then develop a plan for the mitigation. And as such, then we did a request for proposal. It went out, various basically agency put a bid in, and we end up selecting HDR as a consultant to move forward to develop this plan. So today we have Dean Gibson here that will provide kind of an overview and also talk a little bit about the survey and why we're doing so. So here you go, Dean.
All right, thank you, Adam. It's good to see everybody today. So welcome. Just to give you a little overview of what we will be talking about this afternoon is we've done introductions. We're going to give you a little overview of what the purpose of a hazard mitigation plan is. Then we want to talk about the hazards we've identified for Palmdale Water District. And finally, we'll talk about the survey that we're going to ask you to provide. So just a reminder, if you do have questions, jot them down or type them into the chat window, and we'll get to the questions at the end of the session. So why don't we go ahead and get started? And we'll start with the purpose of the hazard mitigation plan. So what is the purpose of a hazard mitigation plan? It's to help us to identify issues so that any sustained action that takes place, and we can reduce or eliminate the long-term risk to human life and to the property from either a natural or a human-caused hazard. So the circle here shows you what we're looking for is there's going to be a disaster, and how do we respond and then recover and then mitigate for that? It's sort of similar to having a spare tire in the trunk of your car. You know that it's there, and it's there for an emergency purposes. So if you do happen to get a flat tire, you can replace your tire with that spare, or you could call the roadside assistance to come and help you with that. So that's what we're looking at today for the Palmdale Water District. So that's the what. So why are we having to do this? And it is based on the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 that Congress passed. It's federal legislation, and it requires that every community update a hazard mitigation plan once every 5 years so that we can remain eligible for federal funding for pre and post-disaster events. So this plan is going to help ensure that the district will be ready and eligible for mitigation projects when funding becomes available. So the Disaster Mitigation Act is, why do we really need that? What we use it for is that it helps us to prevent the loss of life and injury and to protect the public safety. With the planning, we can also prevent outages of water. What we're trying to avoid is not being able to provide the community with the valuable precious water. It also provides a guideline or how we want to be able to respond if a disaster should occur and be able to respond quickly, safely, and effectively. And it helps us to plan for those outages. So basically, we need to find ways to control costs, especially with the increasing costs of responses and recovery efforts. So on the next slide, it actually shows how those trends are increasing the cost for disaster. And that's why we're doing this planning in advance to reduce the costs for the ratepayers. Things like population and community growth or infrastructure, adding more buildings to the area, it increases our exposure to risk. The hazards are either going to be natural or human-caused hazards, and they could also be technological, civil, or terrorist hazards. Those include things like cybersecurity, civil unrest that we've experienced over the last year or so. Examples of health and human health hazards are things like the pandemic that we've just been going through. And also, we've been seeing an increase in disaster declarations by the governor and by the president, especially when we consider things like the drought that is happening right now. So these are the reasons why we're preparing a hazard mitigation plan. So to be able to do that, we wanted to get your input on this. And the city of Palmdale actually has been doing their local hazard mitigation plan as well. And the differences we wanted to point out is the one that we're talking about today is focused on Palmdale Waters District's assets and resources. We do have similar hazards as the city, but ours are a little bit different. And because of that, we need to be able to understand better how you, the public, sees us so that we can get your support and be able to support and respond during and recover. And finally, it's going to help shape Palmdale Water District's mitigation strategy, your response to the survey. So what hazards did we find or identify for Palmdale Water District? Well, we're going to walk through those, and we have about 13 hazards. We have 13 hazards identified for you. So let's step through those now. The first 4 that we're going to show you are natural hazards. These include earthquake, drought, dam failure, and extreme weather. And in extreme weather, it could be either high winds, flood, extreme heat, and even extreme cold. In addition to these hazards, we have other natural hazards and threats that include wildfires, debris flow that blocks the water, algae blooms or waterborne diseases that end up in the water, and just general water contamination that's not good for anybody. Other types of hazards are malicious hazards, those that are caused by humans. And these include the top 2 here, the criminal activity, which can be terrorism or civil unrest, and also cybersecurity, cyber attacks, breaches that impact our financial or any of our digital data. Then the last 2 here, these are considered dependency threats, so power failure or public health. And finally, we have hazard mitigations and hazard incidents, and these can both be accidental or intentional. And these are the types of threats that we want to be able to prevent and mitigate for if they do happen to occur. So how do we get your input on that? Well, we've created a survey. And this here is showing you the survey links, both in English and in Spanish, and we'll be able to provide these to you later. But the survey opened up earlier this week on Monday, and it runs through Thursday of next week, the 27th. And we're hoping that you and your friends will be able to go to the survey and answer the questions. So you're probably curious, what is in the survey? What are the questions like? So let's look a little bit at some of these questions. But to provide an overview, there's going to be a total of 11 questions in our survey, and it is a tool for reducing disaster risk within the Palmdale Water District, and your input is critical. It should take 10 minutes or less to be able to do this survey. And just to show you some example of the questions, well, let's go to the next slide. The one thing I wanted to remind people of is that all your responses are confidential. We're not keeping track of who's giving us responses. We're just keeping track of the responses, and that's what's really going to help us. And this here is an example of the first question that you'll encounter, and it lists all 13 of our hazards. And for each hazard, we're going to ask you to rank it on one of these 5 criteria. For instance, you're seeing here earthquake, that you're either not concerned, somewhat concerned, concerned, very concerned, or extremely concerned as a risk that could impact you through the Palmdale Water District. Another example of a question is the next question here, number 2, and it's how prepared are you and your family to be able to cope with the hazards that we've listed in question 1? And you go through anywhere from not prepared at all to very well prepared or not sure. So these are the types of questions that we're getting to help us understand how you think or react to these types of hazards. One more example of a question is designed to get your level of, understand your level of preparedness. So in this question, we're asking you, what have you done in your household and your business to be able to prepare for hazardous events? So we ask you to check any and all of the ones that apply here. So that's an example. These are examples of the types of questions that you are going to be encountering in the survey, and we hope that you'll take the time to answer the questions. So where do we go from here? So on the next steps in the schedule, we just wanted to share with you where we're planning to take this information and use it. So on the schedule that's in front of you, the survey is currently open right now. It's open May 17th through May 27th. We're hoping to get as many responses back from the community and the ratepayers as possible. Then we'll take that information and we will use that as we develop the hazard mitigation plan. And then we will be able to present a draft of the hazard mitigation plan on July 28th, 2021, and we're going to have an event from 6 to 7 p.m. to be able to get your input and your comments. You'll have a chance to review it in advance, or you could review it later and send us your comments later. Then we'll take that information and we'll rework and update the hazard mitigation plan and provide a final comment or a final document for you to comment on. And we'll present that on August 26th from 3 to 4 p.m. So that's an overview of the hazard mitigation plan and the survey that we have going on right now. We're opening it up for questions now, and I don't know if anybody has typed anything into the chat section, but we'll be able to see your questions and answer them for you.
Let's see. Nothing.
So currently there are no questions.
No question? Okay, no question. Are we sure?
Well, this is either very interesting material and people really understood it, or it's so dull that they had no questions.
Let's give them a few more minutes.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are questions out there.
We got 19 at 10.
Okay. There's a question that says, how often does Palmdale Water District do this survey?
Do you want me to take that, Adam?
Yeah, go ahead, Lee.
Sure. So the requirements for the hazard mitigation plan and when they're updated, they typically are required to do a survey once every 5 years or whenever they update their hazard mitigation plan. So it's coincidental that we're on the same cycle as the city of Palmdale. They're probably a month or two ahead of the district in completing their hazard mitigation plan update. So it'll be at least once every 5 years that this type of survey will be issued.
Thank you. Somebody said, I think we will need to see the draft before we really can get into it.
Okay. Well, I think that we are, that's why one of the Dean mentioned is that we are providing a draft on July. So then, people can take a look at it, and then they can, from there, they can actually kind of comment on it or provide us feedback. And then in August, we'll put in the kind of almost final draft, and then they can take another look at it before we actually finalize it somewhere in October or so.
We'd
Thank
like
you,
to
Adam.
really encourage people to complete the survey now, because we're focused right now on the hazards that we need to be addressing. We identified 13 of those. We'd like to know if any of those are more important or less important to the public, and also if there's any additional hazards. There is an opportunity to add your own hazards to the list. So we strongly encourage you to look at the survey if you can this next week.
Okay, so we have some more questions. One is, what are some ways this hazard mitigation plan will help the district prepare for future events? Will it provide detailed steps for earthquakes, etc.?
I believe that it does. It basically, in a for example, an earthquake. What this plan does is that it just looks at it and say, okay, where is some of the deficiency we might have, and what it does to actually alleviate those deficiency. And so at least we have that, and then now that allows the district to plan our project around, and if we need additional funding, that's where we can actually go to the federal government and say, well, here's some of the things that we need to do. We have certain amount of funding, but we also need help. Okay, and these as things, and it also helped the district prioritize. So based on what the board would like to see, and also the community would like us to address, that is something that we can prioritize based on the various project that is assessed to basically alleviate or reduce the risk that we can incur as part of this assessment.
Okay, another person is asking if they already answered the survey that was emailed to them, could they use the same link to share with others?
That's I'm not too sure. Is that what Judy? Would you be able to answer that question?
Yes, I believe they can use that same link. It's not specific to individuals.
Somebody else wants to know, will you be publishing the draft online at that time? Meaning, I believe in July?
Yes.
Yes.
It'll be definitely published on our website, and I think that we're also looking at potentially having it at a way to have a copy of it for people to take a look at too.
Okay, somebody else is asking, how is the survey going to be used?
Sure. Make sure So the survey, what we're looking for is to get an understanding from the public, from the ratepayers for Palmdale Water District, of what are the hazards that are important to them, what are critical, and then also to understand how prepared they are, or they think they are, for any of those types of events. We use that information as we develop the hazard mitigation plan to both help the district to identify ways to make improvements, or to identify where there are some deficiencies that they can be ready for, but also it's to help to be able to respond, for the district to respond, to say if there is an earthquake or if there is some other water contamination, that they have the steps identified to be able to respond and to prevent any health issues to the public. So understanding how the public perceives them and how well prepared you are will help us to come up with those types of mitigation measures.
There's a follow-up question. What is Palmdale Water District's biggest hazard concern?
So I mean, we do have a thing, and I think I think that, as everybody knows, that we are very close to the San Andreas fault. So that is definitely a big concern, is the earthquake. But I think immediately is really the extreme weather. I mean, we've seen that in the last year and a half, especially with a lot of these power down PSPS that Edison does. So those are some of the things that we've been really looking at and how to mitigate that. But at the same time, that's why we're having HDR help us, is to put together some of the things that we might have overlooked. Okay, so we can really solidify our plan and also, validate it is some of the things that we've been doing. How effective is it, and what other things that we can also do to actually help us have a better reduction of risk, that as we proceed with this hazards mitigation plan and all the projects that we've been doing.
Okay, somebody wants to know, how will the hazard mitigation plan help with the drought?
Right now, I have to say that is the plan. We haven't gone to the point of looking at the plan as to drought. We actually are using our urban water management plans, the stage 1 within that urban water management plan, to reduce some of the concern that we have. But as we are addressing this and the survey comes in, we are also looking at how that we can change any of the things that we've been doing, and what is some of the other stuff that we can focusing on beside conservation, and beside looking at other projects. Is there any idea that the public could have, okay, to help with that? So we are looking at various things that is available to us, and hopefully with this survey, we have more idea flowing in, so then we can actually help make a better decision when it comes to the drought issue.
Okay, and one more question. Will the next 2 meetings be online?
That's going to be
So, and I can't remember, let me back up. The way we've planned it is one of the meetings will be definitely online. The second one will be either in person or a combination of online, virtual, and in person. I just can't remember which ones we've identified. I think the July one would be the all virtual. The August one would be a virtual / in person.
Dean, you're correct.
Okay, and this should be the last question. Will hazards be weighted in terms of probability of occurring to better allocate funds in more probable events?
Dean, you want to take that one?
Yes. So yes, the hazards do get looked at as to which ones might be more impactful to the district. So the advantage is we've identified hazards, or we will be identifying those hazards, evaluating how well the district has already been mitigating for those hazards, and then that'll help us to identify those areas where there may be some additional mitigation or additional help that the district will need to focus on. That's how we're going to end up ranking and prioritizing those hazards, the likelihood to occur, and then the likelihood of damage or consequence.
That's it for questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, well, Dean disappeared on us. Thank you, Dean. That was very informative, and hopefully everybody got, there you are. Thank you so much for joining us. But if you have any additional questions, feel free to contact me. I think I introduced others, and I didn't introduce myself in the beginning. That's kind of embarrassing. I am Judy Shea, the Public Affairs Director for Palmdale Water District. And you can reach me at jshay, JSHAY, at palmdalewater.org, or you can call me directly at 661-456-1041. And please take our survey. I mean, it's super important. We have it in both English and Spanish. Again, it's not a personalized link, so share it with your friends, your colleagues, family members, people who work in within our boundaries, but maybe not live here. They can take it because they work here, and we need their feedback too. So I think we're at the point where everyone's excited about learning whether they won the wonderful emergency kit behind me. So during the question session, we did a raffle, and our winner is, hopefully he is still here. His name is Fred Buss, B-U-S-S. Fred, if you're still here, can you send a message via the chat box to Laura? Or you can, and please call her at 661-441-5944. Laura's number is 661-441-5944, and you can claim your prize. And thank you, Laura. Laura Gallegos, she's our public affairs specialist, and she's been the one who's asking all the questions and making sure our slideshow went really well. So if there are no other questions or anything, thank you so much for joining us. Please complete the survey, and we'll see you at our next Let's Talk H2O. Have a nice afternoon.